Okay, I want to welcome you here today. This is an event that has been planned with the city, with several organizations. The city is working with Home Smart. Is that, what do we call it? We call it Homeworks. And they came to my house. They're very nice. They're teaching me a lot. We've got Action City. They're very knowledgeable people. We've got Cape Ann Climate Change Coalition, and we've got Homeworks. Oh no, that's what we just said. We've got the Heat Smart Alliance working together. So, because we're dealing with an issue that is affecting the whole world. Is we don't want the ocean to flood this building, right? It's gonna if we don't all chip in. And the city is working with groups of people to help make that not happen. So we're thrilled that you're here. And the first person I want to introduce is Gemma Wilkins from the city. She is here because our mayor, who has been so supportive of this, many of you know that he has made this a real focus of his administration. Greg Verga. Many of you saw in the obituaries yesterday that his mother just passed away, and so he cannot be with us today, and our hearts are with him in sympathy. But Gemma has really helped pull all this together. Gemma is a staff planner for the city of Gloucester, and if anybody has any thoughts that the city does not have effective workers, I just want to say, any fantasies of that of mine are gone. Gemma is, no, I'm not going to say it. I want to say she's a gem, but she is. So I'm going to introduce Gemma.
Oh, so nice. I just wanted to thank everyone on behalf of Mayor Verga, who couldn't make it today. On behalf of the city, we appreciate that you're all spending a Saturday talking about heat pumps. Many of you know and have been involved in the climate action and resilience planning process that the city's been going through. It's really that commitment, as Gail had said, to dealing with climate change, but also trying to get people resources that are going to help them out in their day-to-day lives, and that those two things can go together. So yes, thank you all for being here. Two things I'll mention: if you were involved in the climate action planning process, or if you want to find out more, you can go to the website, the city's website. It's Climate Action and Resilience Plan. We are accepting public comments on that until Monday, so please submit your public comments. We'd love to hear from you. And then also, we're partnering with Homeworks Energy to schedule free home energy assessments, and we're also working closely with Action Inc. For those who are income eligible. So feel free after this event to go peruse, sign up for things, and really take action in ways that make sense for your family and also make an impact on the climate. So thank you again for coming, and all of our presenters are way more knowledgeable about heat pumps than I am, and I think you'll get a lot out of this. Thanks.
Except for me, who really doesn't understand it, but I like it. Okay, so I am going to introduce our speaker, Tom Mikas, who has a PhD in mechanical engineering from MIT and led the Rockport Ring Community Task Force, getting a grant to put whole building heat pumps in Town Hall and the police station. And I know that's popular because I happened to march in the 4th of July parade in Rockport. Tom was carrying one of the banners for the Cape Ann Climate Coalition, and he got a lot of cheers in his community. They really appreciate that work. He is coming today as part of Heat Smart Alliance, which is a volunteer group that promotes adoption of low emissions heating, cooling, and related technology in our Massachusetts communities. So he knows the answers to a lot of our questions about heat pumps. Here, Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Gail. So I'm a member of the Cape Ann Climate Coalition Organizing Committee as well.
Mike, hold it up to you. Louder.
Cape Ann Climate Coalition Organizing Committee, as well as a member of the Heat Smart Alliance. And we've got a table back there with Susan helping. So check with her if you have questions after this. And if I could take a couple minutes to talk about these two organizations. First of all, the Cape Ann Climate Coalition, more than 350 members. There are some action groups, so they can divide up and do things outside of the main large meetings. It's folks from any municipality in Cape Ann, and I think there are members from outside, so that's not cheating too bad. And more information at our website. Some photos here. This is a tour of some native gardens, and that's an effective tool for climate change. We've got the Gloucester Horribles Parade where we were marching, and on the right side there's some of the members putting up that graphic for showing sea level rise on the old paint factory. The Heat Smart Alliance has a mission of reducing greenhouse emissions, adopting heat pumps in Massachusetts. It's a statewide volunteer organization. It works for heating and cooling, some water heating, all volunteers, as I said. We've got 62 members from 30 communities. It's growing. And we're educating, coaching, and collaborating and trying to grow. And note, we don't take any money. This is just a volunteer thing. So why heat pumps? Let's start out with that. A couple of pie charts here. The New England energy use shown on the left. We've got a big chunk of the pie. Residential use is 30% of that. The only thing comparable to that is transportation, and then smaller for commercial industrial. So to focus on residential today, taking that slice of the pie and seeing how it slices up, you've got heating and cooling about 61% of residential, and then hot water another 17%. So those are the things that are susceptible to today's heat pump technology. So totaling, it's almost 80% of your home energy needs could be handled by heat pumps. So what's the path to decarbonization that we talk about? This is really aimed at single-family homes, and technology is usually the same for doing multi-units and industrial, commercial. But step one is weatherize. You want to make sure that the house is as tight as it can be. Too close to that speaker. I'm the speaker. That's not right here.
Can you move this way? Yeah, don't worry about
On that side?
Yeah.
I'm a right-handed guy.
I know.
I'll switch to left-handed.
See what happens.
How's that, Jim? Out of your way? Okay, so in the house, you can, first of all, weatherize. That means insulation, primarily in the attic, and do air sealing, which is mostly windows and doors, and big cracks if you got them. You need to do that first, because if your house is leaking or radiating outward, allowing heat to get out, you're going to put in the wrong size heat pump. So you want to have the heat pump sized right for the house, and the first thing to do is to weatherize. Very important. And then you electrify, which means putting in the heat pumps. And then while you're at it, if you want to be 100% renewable, your electricity can be 100% renewable. Because if you're taking it off the grid today, it's like 51%-ish renewable. So what is a heat pump? Well, it moves heat from a cold place to a hot place. The analogy I would mention is water likes to flow downhill, but you can get it to flow back uphill with a pump. So heat likes to move from hot to cold. That's the way it transfers. And you can actually pump it back from cold to hot. That's what a heat pump does. And you've got examples in your house already. A refrigerator is a heat pump. It takes from the colder air inside your refrigerator to the warmer air in your room, pumping it from cold to hot. And dehumidifiers work in a similar way. Air conditioners are actually heat pumps that you just can't reverse to do heating. We'll get into that. So heat pumps can do, as I mentioned, heating and cooling, water heating, a little iffy on whether these are worthwhile, but coming up, clothes drying and maybe pool heating. So the basic math is down here. You put in 1 unit of electricity, and you pull 2 units of heat from outside, and you deliver 3 units of heat to the house. So there's your amplification factor. It's called a coefficient of performance. And 3 is not a fixed number. It varies with what kind of unit you have and how cold it is outside and all that. So that's the basics, but I wanted to get a little more engineering with you. I couldn't resist doing this. These are the components of what's in that black box. You've got an outdoor coil and an indoor coil, and what you're doing in the heating mode is you're absorbing heat from the cold outside, and you're delivering that heat to the warmer air inside. And what makes that happen is that compressor that pumps the refrigerant around with some pressure drops and phase changes that you don't need to know about. But that's what gets the colder outside air delivering heat to the inside warmer air. And in the summer, you just reverse it. There's a valve there, and then it acts like a regular air conditioner. It takes the warmer inside air and pumps it to the cooler outside air. I think that's right. Yeah, so that cools you in the summer. Actually, it's even warmer outside. It's cooler inside, and you pump it to hotter outside. Sorry. So what are the benefits for Massachusetts homes? It gives you some year-round comfort because you're not just getting an air conditioner, you're getting a heater. It's all in one deal. You get a substantial reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and I'll show you some numbers on that. There's savings in energy, potentially, versus, this is going to change from day to day and month to month and year to year, and Ukraine war to Ukraine war. Things are changing in terms of price on your fuel and price on your electricity. So nothing is going to be a fixed number. These are just kind of relative. But currently it's a modest saving versus fuel oil, and it's significant versus propane or electric baseboards. So if you've got electric baseboards, that price goes up with electricity just the way the heat pump does. So that's going to be always a savings. And also because there's no combustion sources in the house, it could be safer because there's no carbon monoxide and nothing's going to explode. I'll skip the thing on the bottom. So how much emissions reductions? And this is not going to depend on cost. This is just how many metric tons of greenhouse gas you get from a year's worth of running this thing in a 2,000 square foot typical home. And this is based on the grid emissions, so whatever you get off the grid in Massachusetts for electricity, and assuming some high efficiency equipment. Ground source heat pumps are pretty low, less than 1 ton per year. Air source heat pumps a little more than 1, and that's compared to natural gas, which is more than 3, baseboard electric about the same, propane almost 4, and fuel oil more than 5. So there's big savings just if you take electricity off the grid. If you get renewable energy, then you can get that down to 0. The high heat pumps are then 0 emissions because there's no fuel in the house, there's no fuel making the electricity. So which type of heat pump is right for your home? Every home is unique, so you're going to need some help with this. Not necessarily from me, but there's some folks in the room that can help with this. On the left side, you've got hydronic as the basic type for what you may have now. There's a boiler, and it's delivering heat to either radiators or baseboards, or maybe a radiant heat in the floor. And the other type on the right here is forced air, or forced hot air sometimes called, where you have a furnace, and it's ductwork supplying hot air to rooms and returning cold air back to the unit. Those are the basic types. And here's some heat pump options for the hydronic side. You've got what's called a mini split, and these split names are a little weird, so I think more accurately call it single zone. You've got an outdoor unit, just like an air conditioner, and an indoor wall unit, or an air handler, I guess we call it, and that just delivers the heat to the inside. You can also have a multi-split or multi-zone. There you have an outdoor unit again, but it delivers refrigerant to lots of indoor places. You can have ceiling, ductwork, compacted, wall units, floor units, and you can also perhaps have an air-to-water heat pump. These are not very efficient because it's not that easy to get air into the hot water. But for hydronic distribution, you can potentially use your existing piping. You have to modify it for having a lower water temperature with a heat pump than you would with the boiler. But it could be a good match for radiant floor heating. And for cooling, you'll need special deals. So air-to-water is kind of an oddball here. For forced air distribution, the left side shows a central air source heat pump, or in the middle of the left there, you've got an outdoor unit, just like your AC. And on the inside, you can either have partial electrification, which is where you're kind of adding it to an existing or potentially new unit where you have sort of a a backup or booster from the furnace. Or you can go to the right side of that left block, the complete electrification. Then it's only electric, and maybe on the coldest of cold days you'll have resistance heating to back you up. On the right side is the other alternative, ground source heat pumps. And in this case, there is no outside unit. You have wells, or maybe horizontal, not so much here with the ledge, but probably wells that go down and grab heat from the rocks, and wet rocks, and bring it back up in a refrigerant, or in an antifreeze solution actually. And then you have an indoor unit that takes that heat and then can pump it to whatever level you need for the house, put that into the house. Noting that if you have existing ducting you're trying to use, there's some issues about sizing and insulation and sealing, so you got to have good stuff to start with. Okay, just briefly on ground source versus heat pump. Ground source, I don't know if this is still true, but there were better incentives. I mean, the government incentives are kind of changing these days. The efficiency is higher because you're taking heat from the ground, which is pretty constant temperature, versus outside where it can get pretty damn cold. So that gives you a higher efficiency and lower energy costs, lower emissions if you're using grid power. And nothing outdoors that looks like a unit, so it might be better aesthetically. And everything's in a package for that heat pump. On the air source, it's going to be a little cheaper, a little more competitive market. Outdoor space, not that much, just like an air conditioner. It doesn't disturb your landscape too much, and there are some options to do that ductless. So for domestic hot water, this is a little less common these days, but sometimes called a hybrid water heater. You get about 60% savings on energy or carbon emissions. Good, pretty fast payback compared to conventional electric heaters. Compared to a gas-fired hot water, not so much savings, but better for emissions. And if you get the right plumber, they can install this. Not all of them like to do that. So how do the energy costs compare? Now, oops, where am I? I erased the numbers that were off the bottom because these were calculated a while back before things started going a little crazier with costs. But in a relative sense, although your particular situation is going to differ depending on what you're paying for electricity and what kind of fuel you have, ground source heat pumps and natural gas are about the same operating cost, annual cost. Air source is a little higher, fuel oil is a little higher than that, propane is significantly higher, and your baseboard electric, that's really the expensive one. Now the ones in the baseboard electric can be compared directly with the ground source and the air source heat pump because those costs are all based on electricity, so those go up and down together. But the natural gas and fuel oil and propane, those are going to shift around somewhat independently of the other ones depending on your fuel costs. So what's your action plan? Plan ahead. If you wait until your furnace craps out, you're going to be a little desperate and you're not going to be able to do something very efficiently, especially if it's a cold day in February. So if your heat pump is aging, and I don't know what end of life is these days, I hear 25 years, I hear 15 years, your water heater might be 10 years, don't wait till it fails. If you're planning ahead, plan ahead. You can add AC to a home that doesn't have it in the process of having the heat pump for heat. And certainly if you're planning an addition or a major renovation or a new home, there you've got some lead time to get exactly what you'd like to have for 100% of your heating and cooling. So how do you get started? Get some information. I mentioned Susan's in the back there. That's a good source for the heatsmartalliance.org. Get a free home energy assessment, and we got some folks that are very knowledgeable about that, and they'll be up here to answer your questions about that one. Get help from a community heating coach. It's a little difficult now. We don't have a coach on Cape Ann. We'd like to have one. If anybody in the room would like to be volunteering, to be trained, or if you already know it all, let us know. Talk to Susan, we'll get you hooked up to be a local coach. Then there's a matter of getting quotes, and that's another thing that the local folks can help you with here on getting your first visit. And again, noticing every home is unique, and the installer is going to teach you something. You probably have more than one bid, so you'll learn different things, and they may not agree with each other. But consider all the factors, not just cost, there's other factors. So I think I'm pretty good on time, so I'll show one more slide here. We're talking about electrify everything, and I just talked about heat pumps. What else can you electrify? We're not going to talk about this so much today, but there's going to be more in this series of electrify everything, as I understand. So getting that remaining 21% of your residential energy use. There's cooktops, like induction. There's lighting, which is, I hope, already LED, so there's not much you can do with that. And there's all kind of vehicles you can electrify. Motorcycles, cars, trucks, buses, even trains. They're talking about the commuter train being electrified. Boats, that's going to be a little harder sell, but you can electrify boats, it's been done. Back at your house, outdoor equipment, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, chainsaws. Prevail upon the folks doing the carp to do their municipal operations more electrically. Businesses can certainly get into this with a lot of the same technologies, and any industrial operations, some of which are pretty well adapted to going electric. That's it for me.
Thank you, Tom. And Tom will be on the panel, so you'll get to ask him questions as well. At this time, I would like to invite up our panel members. We have Martin Florin, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Homeworks Energy. And Tom will be on the panel from Heat Smart Alliance. Lou Silvera will be on the panel. Thank you, Lou, from Action Incorporated. And is Lori Timmerman here from National Grid? Yay, Lori, welcome. This is great. And when they get settled, we have two questions for them. One is really just introducing themselves and their organization. But after those two questions, we will have a mic passed around and ask for your questions. If you don't like speaking in a mic or in public, if you just want to write on one of the pieces of paper there a question, you can raise your hand and we'll collect them. And at the end of the open mic, we will read those questions time allowed. Any questions before we move on? Great. Thank you. Oh, yes. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question on the presentation?
Why don't we do that during questions? Because Tom is going to be on the panel, and he will be open to questions. Is that all right? That would be great.
It's all right.
Good. All right. We got a plan. All right. Thank you. You have a mic.
Hello? All right, perfect.
Okay. So our first question is, please introduce yourself and your organization, and what work do you do on heat pumps? Thank you.
Would you prefer if we stand while we're talking, or sitting? It's fine. Stand? All right. Just so everybody can see. Hi, so I'm Martin Florin, as I said, Chief Executive Officer at Homeworks Energy. So we are the primary home performance contractor in the residential Mass Save program. So essentially what that means is we go out and we do energy assessments. A lot of you that I've already spoken to at the booth have already had Mass Save work done, which is fantastic. But that's essentially what we do. So we go out to your home with our energy specialists. We take a look at what your home needs in terms of energy efficiency recommendations. We might do a lot of things at the visit itself that Tom talked about in terms of getting light bulbs, LED light bulbs installed, upgrading you to low flow shower heads, energy efficient power strips, all these kind of things. Also with programmable thermostats is a big part of that as well. So we can upgrade all of those things when you're at your home. And then we also take a look at what else your home needs to be more energy efficient, primarily focused on weatherization and air sealing, which Tom also mentioned is incredibly important on the heat pump side as well. And also heating and cooling upgrades to more high efficiency systems, especially now heat pumps. So then we go and we actually do that work ourselves as well. We don't sub that out to partners and things like that. The vast majority of that work we're installing as well. So we try to do a whole home approach to what you need in your home, from the basics of lighting to insulation to heating and cooling, heat pumps, etc. And so at this point, we install several hundred heat pumps per year, essentially. And we're actually partnered with the town of Gloucester, as was mentioned earlier, to do the same thing here and encourage as many residents to move forward to this work as possible.
Hello, my name is Louis Silvera, and I work for Action Energy. I'm the heating system coordinator. And so at Action, we have a few programs that also include weatherization, the AMP program, appliance management program, where we install light bulbs, we'll replace refrigerators and air conditioners, and also we'll switch out dehumidifiers as part of the AMP program also. And as far as heat pumps, we do quite a few. Like we have people on staff that will go out to your house for clients that are eligible in our fuel assistance program. And we'll go out to the house, we'll do a heat loss, we will size the heat pump to your house, and pretty much try to save you as much as we can in terms of like kilowatts, gallons if we're replacing an oil system or a gas system. So our heating program, we do actually replace many types of heating systems, but now we are really trying to focus on a lot of heat pumps and trying to educate our clients how they work and how beneficial they can be. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I see some familiar faces out here. This is nice to be with you today. I'm Lori Timmerman, I'm with National Grid, and I work on the energy efficiency side of the company, and we are a sponsor of Mass Save. In my day job, not my weekend job, my day job, I help municipalities to make their facilities more energy efficient, and I also help folks like Gemma and Tom to launch programs to reach residents and small businesses and folks in the community to let them know about our programs and the incentives that are available to do weatherization and change your heating systems to make things in your home more efficient, more comfortable, help you spend less money on your energy bills. So thank you for inviting me.
Me again, I guess you heard what I did for Heat Smart Alliance. I think you heard what I did for Heat Smart Alliance. This is the first time I've given one of these talks, so maybe I'll do more of those in the future. I was working with the Green Community Task Force in Rockport to do things like get a grant for the heat pumps in the police station and the town hall that Gail mentioned. Unfortunately, I'm currently off that committee because the select board thinks I'm doing too many committees, but we'll see how that works out. I just want to give you a little... Okay. Is that one better? I think I was cutting in and out on that one. So I'm hoping to get more back into the Green Community Task Force in Rockport, select board permitting. I'll give you a little heat pump history for me. First, I was thinking, when's my first experience of pumping heat around? In 1969, I was on the design team for the environmental system of Skylab, America's first space station, which launched in the early 70s. And that was a matter of pumping heat from the hot side that was in the sun really intense in outer space, to the cold side, which is really cold because it's radiating to the rest of outer space. So I guess I've been pumping heat a long time.
Gee, how many people here have heating problems in outer space? Okay. So our second question is, can you please give us an example of a customer who was successful at installing or living with heat pumps? What did it look like? What factors made the customer's experience a success?
Sure. And again, and a lot of these things are similar. This is much louder microphone. A lot of these things are similar to what Tom was saying earlier, but as opposed to any specific customer, in general, kind of the customers that we've seen have the most success with heat pumps are going to be customers that check off a lot of those boxes that Tom was talking about before. So specifically, a home that is currently on electric baseboard or propane or oil heat, a home that another thing would be a home that has been well insulated is a big part of this as well. If you have a home that's currently drafty, you need to get that insulated before you put the heat pumps in, because otherwise that other graph where it talks about the relevant cost between systems is not going to be accurate if your home isn't insulated well enough. So that's another big part of that. The last thing I'd say, from our perspective, is somebody who's obviously taking the most advantage of the programs that are out there that are being offered. So if you did a heat pump 3 years ago, you'd have very different incentives than if you're doing a heat pump now. Right now you can get up to $10,000 of incentives on a heat pump system, which is 8 times more than you could get last year, basically. So and the reason for that is because the utilities and the city and the state in general knows that electrification is the way we have to go and is willing to put the money behind that, essentially. So to wrap that up, I'd say somebody who has a home that they are willing to insulate to make as effective as possible, has one of these alternative fuel sources that is a bit more expensive, so electric baseboard or oil, and has the time to take advantage of the program incentives that are being offered.
Oh, hello. So, our program in action differs a little bit from Homeworks, where our clients are eligible, so they don't get charged for the services. And like a lot of our clients are very interested in saving energy and in becoming, more greener, I would guess. And so, like we do a full program where we'll insulate the house. We'll make sure. We'll have an auditor go there and do an audit, look at the house, scan the walls, make sure there's insulation in the walls, make sure the attic is air sealed, there's no chases where heat, flows up through the attic and you lose heat that way. So they really pay attention to air sealing, weather stripping doors, tightening up windows. We can fix windows, like replace panes and just try to tighten up the house as much as possible. And from there we can, change out say they have electrically charged heating system. We can put a heat pump in there, and like a lot of people notice, well, the clients that we service, they notice that the house is a lot, quieter. That's an indication, and a lot cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, less drafty, and a lot of people are interested in like the new programmable thermostats and Wi-Fi thermostats that we also can have installed, and they seem to be very happy with the new technologies that are out there.
So my example is going to be a little bit different. Actually, this was years ago before the incentives became quite as good as they are. I had been working with 3 7-story condo association facilities, lots of units. They were electric baseboard heated. They had window and wall unit air conditioning units. And a lot of folks living in those buildings were living on a fixed income, and I was called in to help folks with figuring out how to help with energy efficiency. So obviously we wanted to help them with any weatherization and air sealing, as the other 2 colleagues of mine have mentioned is very important as your first step. But what was also really important was a lot of these folks were experiencing equipment failing, and I really appreciate that Tom mentioned that you want to catch things before they fail. People, don't want to have to pay for a new air conditioning unit or, in this case, baseboard heating system to be replaced when a heat pump can be put in to address both of those needs. So it was kind of a perfect combination of circumstances that were in place, people dealing with really high bills and needing help, and having systems that needed to be replaced, and they were the right kinds of systems that could be replaced with a heat pump and actually save them a lot of money and increase the comfort in their homes. So I think it's a really good example of how multi-unit dwelling could take advantage of these programs. Now, today, if I were doing this, it would be even more financially beneficial to those homeowners. And the same scenario is relevant whether those are rental units or they're condo units. The program can be available and people can modify. In this case, it was because they were condos, it was on a unit-by-unit basis whether the homeowner wanted to make that change or not. So, thank you.
So I'll talk from my own personal experience. In 2014, we were renovating a house that we had bought in Rockport, and it had a 25-year-old oil system, which was pretty much end of life. At the time, oil prices were pretty high. Comparable today almost, I think. They were pretty high, and electricity was not so high. So it was kind of a no-brainer in terms of operating cost. It was going to save a lot of money to put in the heat pump. And we went with the ground source. Turned out to be not that hard to drill through granite. These guys do it all the time, so I got 3 wells in my driveway. I think it helped to have a little engineering expertise because there was a installation error and a design error in the system they put in. Unfortunately, they kind of made my unit stop working in the blizzard of 2015. So we went to some electrical heaters for a temporary thing so the cats and we didn't freeze. But having got past those, it's been working quite well. We've had really one component fail. It was one of the water pumps. And it's important to have a good craftsman available. It turns out that a plumber who knows how to do electronics is what you need for a ground source system. And it's working quite well. Who knows how much money we're going to save with prices of electricity changing, but it turns out when you size your system for the winter, it turns out to be oversized for the summer. So it's a hell of an air conditioner.
Well, now we know where to go if we're too hot. Okay, now at this time, Ellen is going to be our runner with the microphone, and just raise your hand and she will come to you. If you have a question, please ask it.
Grab your microphone.
Hi, this is a pretty elementary question, but I've seen heat pumps in people's houses and it's like a box on the wall. And so my question is there one, if it's a large house, is it one box or many boxes? And can you have zones with a heat pump system if you have a house that you don't, for example, want to heat or cool each room all year long?
Yeah, I can jump on that one. Yeah, actually zoning is one of the biggest benefits of using heat pump systems depending on what you get set up, especially if you have a ductless mini split or something like that. So there were a couple parts to that. So first of all, you're talking about on the inside of the house, there's kind of the box on the inside wall, right?
One box?
So that's per room that you want to heat, essentially, so per space. So as Tom mentioned, you can have a kind of a single outside condenser to a single inside head, essentially is what you call it, a heating or cooling head. Or you can have a multi-system where you have one condenser outside and it connects to multiple heads within the house so that each room that you specifically want to heat or cool has its own system. It's zoned separately. It's got its own, essentially its own thermostat that you can heat or cool that room. Which that zoning in and of itself provides a significant amount of the energy efficiency savings, because right now if you think, I want to heat my bedroom or I want to cool my bedroom when I'm sleeping, you might also be heating or cooling your entire living room or the entire floor or whatever it is, right? So the benefit of having a split system is you're only using the energy needed to heat or cool the specific room that you're looking at. In terms of the wall units themselves, that's not the only solution. So if you currently have a furnace that's ducted, you can, as Tom was saying, you can replace that furnace with a heat pump system and use the existing ducting. Sometimes that ducting needs to be amended to work better with that system, but then you don't need any different wall, any different unit on the inside wall. You can just use your existing ventilation system. And there's other things as well. There's cassettes. There's different types of things you can install. So if the look of that unit inside your house is something you're very much against for whatever personal reason, there are other systems, other head types that you can get installed that don't show up that same way. So there's flexibility, and you know, whoever comes out to give you a quote, and as you know, Tom was saying as well, you should get multiple quotes if you're interested to get different perspectives. But whoever comes out to give you that information should be able to give you very specific solutions that would fit what you're looking for.
Is there anyone else on the panel like to follow up on that? Okay. All right.
I'm interested in learning about federal and state tax rebates.
So I know that. Sorry, I should stand. So the question was about federal and state tax rebates, right? Tax incentives. So I do know what's in the news recently is on the federal side, they've rolled out all these new programs, right? Or they've announced new programs. The Inflation Reduction Act was the main one that has a lot of new programs that they're looking to push out. A lot of that is still being figured out exactly how that's going to impact everybody here. So on the federal level, they've determined what those new programs are going to be, but that information and that funding essentially goes to each state's Department of Energy, in our case the DOER, and they then determine exactly how that program will be applied here in Massachusetts, especially because Massachusetts has the Mass Save program, which is, you know, the #1 or #2 ranked program in the entire country. We have very strong incentives already, but this federal program is built for the entire country, for states who don't have anything. So here in Massachusetts, the DOER needs to figure out how are all these programs going to work together. So that's one thing, and that is going to take a while for them to figure out. I don't have a timeline myself. Obviously, I'm unfortunately not involved in that. But that's going to take a while to figure out exactly how that works. That's the same on tax incentives that are within those new programs as well. Those will probably be figured out a little bit faster. The one thing I do know from talking to certain people is that likely you'd be able to use the tax incentives that are offered on top of the Mass Save program incentives that you can apply. So that's definitely a big thing that's coming that people are excited for. The specifics, I'm not aware of yet. I haven't been determined. There are some existing tax incentives in place, but they're definitely much smaller than what they're looking to roll out. And I think both of them have annual caps and things like that applied. So I believe there is an existing tax incentive in place that I believe caps out at $500, if I'm not mistaken, which can obviously be a big impact, but I personally don't have enough experience working with that to give specific details on that. I don't know if anybody else has more information.
I just want to mention, in addition, when he brought up the Mass Save incentives are, if you were to do your whole home over, it would be a $10,000 incentive if you are a residential customer, and if you did partial work in your home, it would be $12.50 per ton that you would receive. And we also have enhanced incentives if you're a moderate income resident. So I want to add that to the equation, but I will admit this is really new to a lot of folks who are working in this space, like how the state and federal tax changes are going to impact us. And I guess I would kind of put it out to Gemma to say that I would love to work with you to try to figure it out better so we can kind of communicate more broadly across all the communities with whom I work when we do have this figured out.
Thank you, Laura. That's very helpful. I'm going to ask a follow-up in a minute. But what I would like, and Ellen, you see this person here, but what I would like to say is Cape Ann Climate Change Coalition is committed to helping educate people as this unrolls, because we're very aware that the two complicated bills have just been passed both federally and state, which many of you helped happen through your lobbying. Thank you. And so, for instance, on November 10th, we don't have a site yet, Senator Tarr is going to speak in the evening, and we'll get that information out to start unrolling what the Mass bill looks like and how that'll affect us. But this is something that is going to take a couple, some of these programs aren't even set to happen for a year, 2 years. it's going to take a while to unroll. So we'll try to keep you informed, and the city, working with the city is great. Okay, now there was a great, is this a follow-up question first?
Just the term $12.50 per ton, what does that mean?
$1,250 per ton of the heating system that's installed at your house. So a contractor's going to come out, and hopefully you get multiple quotes, and they're going to quote you how much it's going to take to heat and cool your home. And then based on the tonnage of that system, they'll size it for you, you'll get those incentives. So $1,250 per ton of heating and cooling size system in your house, okay? And it's dependent on your specifics in your home. I mean, it's not like I could say to anybody without a contractor coming out what it would take, because it really is dependent on, like we were discussing earlier, are you gonna do one room? Are you gonna do 4 rooms? Are you gonna do the whole house? So that it really is dependent on a contractor coming out. But really great incentives, like he was saying, compared to last year, significantly higher, so it should help.
My question is for Lou. How aggressively is Action able to deal with landlords? You know, obviously, for a person with low income, a tax incentive is useless. But the landlord is a different situation. So that's the question. How are you at dealing with the landlord?
So we, like, you know, say a client's on fuel assistance, we'll go out to that tenant's home and evaluate the house. But before we do that, we have to get permission from the landlord. We have what's called an LTA. We have the landlord sign off on it. We explain to the landlord, like, we'd like to do, you know, it could be weatherization, a heat pump, a heating system. And so the landlord would sign off on it. If the landlord agrees, then we can move forward. If he doesn't, then, you know, we can't really do anything other than, you know, just kind of inform them. So, thank you.
Hi, thank you. If you install equipment now and the incentives aren't available right now, would you be grandfathered in?
Who's this question for? Could you say that again, please? If we install...
If you have equipment installed now and nobody's clear what some of the tax incentives are, or when they're going to be available, is there a date that you don't want your equipment installed before? You know, or do we all wait until we know, like, the date those incentives begin?
Right.
I realize we should all be here because we want to not use fossil fuels, but the other part is important also.
Okay, thank you. For Action, there are no incentives. Our clients are on fuel assistance or a discount rate, so National Grid would cover the cost of the replacement or the install. So that would, you know, would that be a question for you?
Yeah, so kind of like I was saying before, the issue is there's no date known right now because they are still trying to figure this out. And as was mentioned, it could take a couple of years until they have an actual program that's ready to roll out. I think what's important to think about is the incentives that were just rolled out for this year, as we were saying before, is a multitude greater than what they were before. Those are the incentives that you can fix on right now, basically. So if you're going through the market rate or the moderate income program under the Mass Save program, you'd be eligible, like we're saying, for $10,000, even up to $16,000 in the moderate income program. There's an in-between between the income eligible and the market rate program. But those are going to be by far the biggest impact on the cost of this system. The way that they've kind of set this up, if you think about it, kind of as we were talking about before, if your system is getting a little bit older, if you're in that 12, 15, 17 or higher range on your existing system, you don't want to enter into, especially this upcoming winter, not being confident in whether your system is going to make it through that and needing to have some kind of emergency service or something like that coming in. So especially in those situations, I would not recommend waiting if this is something that you're thinking about doing. If your system's relatively new, etc., then yeah, it makes sense maybe to wait. In fact, wait until your system is reaching to that age, etc. But yeah, definitely if there's a system that's a little bit older, you should start working on that sooner rather than later. The other thing, so you wouldn't be grandfathered in. There are already some existing programs. There are some existing tax incentives. Like I said, I don't work with those a lot, so I don't know the details, but I do believe there is something you can already get. The new ones would just increase that a little bit, but that difference is going to pale in comparison to the difference we just had in the program getting up to $10,000. So if you're thinking, if I have a 15-year-old system, I'm going to need to replace my system at some point. A new furnace that you get installed is going to be, $12,000, $15,000, something along those lines. Again, it's very different for every home. I'm not going to put a price out there for every specific situation. But, with these $10,000 incentives that you can get with the heat pumps, a new heat pump system can cost less or the same as replacing an entire new furnace anyways. So now would be the right time from a financial perspective to do that in those situations. So yeah, I don't have a specific date, unfortunately, on those incentives. I would not recommend waiting if you have a system that's starting to get into that zone where it's time to start looking at what a replacement looks like.
Two quick questions about the placement of the head units. If you're going to use it for both heating and cooling, where is the ideal placement? Is it up high on a wall or up low? And secondly, in our house, we sprayed in foam insulation a few years ago, so there's this thick congealed substance in the walls. Can you run the refrigerant ducts through that?
So you filled your wall cavities with foam. So what they do is they run lines on from the condenser outside. They'll run a line on the exterior of the wall and then drill a hole. Depending on if you have like a head that's high, or you can have a floor unit. Depending where that head is, they'll drill a hole and then mount that head on the inside, and then they cover the lines up with. It's almost like it almost looks like a downspout. To make it look nice. And
it has to be on the exterior.
The lines are usually ran on the exterior, correct? Yes.
And my other question, you want it up higher, up low in a room?
Well, it depends. If you have a high head unit, it'll be up high on the wall. Some people prefer like a lower unit, so it'll be a floor duct or a floor head would go on the floor. So you have options, so you can, depending on the layout of the house.
And is there equal efficiency up and down?
Yes, yeah, it's just a different style of way to, put the heat in or the cooling, so.
Yes, there's some hands up front that have been up for a while. Oh,
Yeah, just the last thing I'd add to that was, just to clarify, is it's mostly going to be an aesthetic choice on high versus low, which head you want. Because again, it's not like a radiant system where the heat just emanates from it. It doesn't kind of blow the hot air or the cold air out, so it is going to fill your space. And it depends obviously on what you're looking for your home or what already exists in your home, etc. So it's not as big of a decision maker whether it's a high or a low head in the room itself.
Do they have louvers?
And we're told that there is no coach available on Cape Ann. Given that, where do we turn to get started and for guidance in going through this very complex process?
In terms of Heat Smart Alliance, we have information on the website, and other than that, we're looking for a coach.
I would add that when you are ready to go out and get multiple quotes, there is a consultative service that's available on the Mass Save website where we have ICF as our consultant that will be available to you that can help look at your quotes. And if you want the details on where to find that on the website, come see me in the corner after the event. But definitely encourage you to get multiple quotes, and if you need help comparing them, they can help you with that.
Yeah, the last thing I was just going to add is, and then around the room right here as well, so at the table, at the Homeworks table here, you can get signed up for information, or at Action on the income eligible side, you can sign up for information, and we've all got people who are going to come out to your house and give you quotes and all that kind of stuff, so you can get started right away if you're interested.
Yes, I guess I'm a little bit further along in this process than most of the people here, because the oil bills last winter compelled me to look at alternatives. So we had the Mass Save people come down and do the energy assessment and tell us what needed to be done. And we're going to have the house insulated. I got some new windows in and everything. Hopefully the place is going to be encapsulated. But the thing is, like, I'll confirm what these people say. The difficulty you have as a homeowner in making a decision on this is the fact that it's an expensive proposition. They quoted us $30,000, and at my age, I know I'm not going to get the payback on that. So it was a question to my mind, do I get anything really of benefit if I insulate the house? Do my oil savings go down such that it really doesn't even make sense to get the heat exchange technology? However, from a social point of view, I understand that it's a good thing to do. But the problem is what's great for the social world is not necessarily great for an individual. And the problem I had was when I asked the people about when they came in to say what the tonnage and the BTUs and everything else, and the heads and stuff, they said, well, we have to do this to get this rebate. And it may not make sense. We're heating up rooms that we don't, or we have to put heads on rooms that we don't need. And he said, put electric stuff in the bathrooms, and he said, you have to do this for a rebate. So I'm now at the point where I'm saying, the hell with the rebate, just give me the thing where I need it, and the air conditioning will be great in the summer. So I know I'm long-winded and I don't get to the point, but the point is that there isn't anybody. When I asked the guy, I said, is there anybody that I can go to that's had this done, that I can get some kind of independent evaluation as to whether or not it makes sense? And he said, well, we got all of these privacy laws and you can't do this, and you can't do that. And I said, look, you get a house painted, the first thing the painter does is say, can I put a sign on your yard and let you be a referral, and I'll take $500 off the job. So I said to myself, I don't know whether I'm getting a cock and bull story about privacy law, but if it would take a couple of grand off my price, I'll put a sign out there. So the thing what I'm trying to say is that the information is very, very difficult to come by for an individual homeowner to stand out and say, yeah, okay, I'll pay the 30 grand and hope that I save something every year. So I just want to know if, like, there's some kind of a plan or some kind of a referral service like these people have been asking, that you can go to somebody except the, quote, used car salesman for some good information. Thank you.
So you sound like a prime candidate to be able to use the consultative service I mentioned. So it can help you not only talk through that quote that you have, but if you had more than one, compare them. And also that resource on the Mass Save website, you can not only email with them, but you can also set up a time to talk to them. Can take you through the different approaches that you could take for your home. So if you're trying to replace everything in your home, obviously there's circumstances you need to take into consideration. You've got heat in your bathroom today. they're concerned about how you're going to heat that space when you don't have your oil system anymore, right? So you don't want to have a freezing cold bathroom, your pipes are going to freeze. So all the elements of what would happen if you completely replaced the system you have today could be discussed with that consultant. But also you could have some conversation around maybe there's frequently used spaces in your home where you want to put a heat pump and do that approach instead. And that's what I'm doing in my home. I'm picking my most commonly used spaces and putting heat pumps in them because for me it doesn't make sense to completely replace my whole home. And there's some families who put in a system and they'll use it in conjunction with their existing system if that system isn't end of life. So on most days they're going to be using the heat pumps, and then on very, very, very cold days their existing system will kick on. When it's 0 degrees out. The heat pumps can work at a low temperature, but in those families' homes, they don't want to put a heat pump in every room, and in order to not have pipes freeze, they will use their old system for those very cold, 5 very coldest of days. So there's a lot of different ways to go about this, and I really recommend that you get a contractor that you feel comfortable talking through those scenarios with. And I know it's tough. There is a list of contractors on the Mass Save site. There's also other sources, and I don't know if Heat Smart Alliance has, sometimes folks will go through and say, here's some good vendors that are local vendors. Green Energy Consumers Alliance has a list of vendors that work in this space. So there's a variety of sources, but if you want to come talk to me at the end, I can at least hook you up with those, because you are further along than I think a lot of people in this room who are just starting the journey. Yeah, you know a lot.
Ellen, there's a person who's been raising her hand up here in front.
And just before we get that question, I just want to follow up one more thing. Because you were also asking at the very beginning, okay, if I get insulation work done, do I even need to make the switch? Does that help the oil system by itself? So getting the insulation work done will help with your existing bills as well. It will make your home more efficient at keeping either that heat inside or keeping the cold inside, depending on what season we're in. So that will make an impact, but the difference, as kind of Tom was pointing out, between a heat pump and an oil system, in the exact same house, a heat pump is going to be more effective and cost effective as well compared to that oil system, on top of those insulation improvements. So in the exact same situation, and again, this could fluctuate with oil and electric and all that kind of stuff, and that's, I don't want to, if I knew which way that was going, we'd all be making a lot more money because we know exactly where the markets are going. So I can't guarantee any changes there, but yeah, based on those different fuel costs, it would still be more effective to have the heat pump in there. And a lot of that is because a heat pump system in and of itself is hyper efficient. Tom was talking about how you pay for 1 unit of electricity to get 3 units of heating and cooling inside. You don't have that with any of your other systems. With an oil system especially, those systems can get dirty and gunked up, and they don't work as well, and they lose a lot of efficiency over time, a lot faster than a heat pump system would. So also over time, that is going to have a significant impact as well.
Hi. Everything I'm hearing makes me think that I'll probably go toward a hybrid because I have oil heat right now. But I did want to say, I know what your question was about, Zenith. I had Mass Save come in, and they analyzed the whole house and determined I need to insulate my attic, which I'm going to do. And they gave me LED lights and energy efficient shower heads and lots of other suggestions. But the one thing that was difficult is they immediately sent me a quote from a vendor, or maybe it is them, to come in and insulate our attic, which it needs. But it was going to be totally insulated on the floor, which means we'd have no storage, and we don't have a basement. So they did say, if you don't want to do this, you can go to a vendor and have them come up with another solution, which I'm going to do. But everybody should know that with all the costs we're talking about, there's also the idea of using solar panels to help actually provide the heat pumps with energy. And I just got 4 quotes on solar panels by going to a website called Energy Star or Energy Save. Energy Save. And even though I'm old, like Zenith said, basically, I would be paying for this without paying electrical bills, by the way. You have to subtract that. I would be paying for this for something between, depending on what I choose, between 8 and 17 years. But I would then be making money because I own the solar panels. They actually provide the energy to the heat pump. So when you look at costs, you have to look at what were you paying before, electric bills every month. Well, instead, you may get a zero finance loan and be paying on that loan instead of paying electric bills for all those years. And at one point, you break even and then you make money. So it's hard to talk about this without talking about the choice of alternative energy as well. That's all.
Where do you get a 0% loan?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add, yeah, there is a 0% financing option that's provided by the Mass Save program as well. In a lot of situations, you know, the ideal situation is that funding makes it so that your additional monthly payment that you make on that is actually maybe roughly equivalent to these savings that you're having on the utility bill in the first place, right? And so that would essentially let you, you know, for free or for no additional cost, basically, switch out your system. Doesn't always work out that way. Every home is different, all that kind of stuff. But it is definitely something to take advantage of. It's a 0% financing, which is just a great opportunity. The other thing I'd say for your attic, absolutely. So there are contractors, Homeworks is one of them, that would we would insulate your attic and then build a platform storage as well, and then you can insulate under that platform storage. So it's contractor specific, but that's something that we would, for example, be able to do.
And just one more factor about the economic question. Think about what you're doing to the value of your home. When you've got something good installed, and you're going to be thinking about its future value, whether you sell it or pass it on to someone. For example, I would have been willing to pay more for my house if it had a ground source heat pump and well insulated rather than a 25-year-old oil system.
So like a lot of other people on Cape Ann, my house has asbestos siding. How do you handle the asbestos issues during installation?
I don't want that one.
So what happens is, you know, your house gets audited, they determine it's asbestos. They have asbestos specific contractors that would remove the siding, remove where they need, like they're gonna do like an exterior drill. So they don't drill through the asbestos, they actually pull the nails, pull that specific shingle, drill a hole, and then insulate that cavity and just, you know, continue that all the way around the house. And then they put it back. So they're not, you know, they're taking care not to like break it or you know, damage it, and just nail it back to where it was.
Yes, hi. I understand, you know, for environmental reasons, electrify is the way to go. However, my understanding is that National Grid is about to raise the cost of electricity 68%. So, I mean, it makes it very difficult to trust. You know, of course, on one level, environmentally, yes, and perhaps for the ownership of your home, the value. But would someone please speak to that? And I understand Mass Save and National Grid are also connected. So it makes one wonder. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm with the energy efficiency side of Mass Save, but I'll just kind of reflect back that you have a valid concern. The rates are going up, and it's something to take into consideration as you decide whether heat pumps are the right solution for you. As things stand, if you have an oil system, you still would be better off with a heat pump. So I will say that. The other thing is, for those of you who live in Gloucester, you're very lucky that you have a municipal aggregation program. So those folks who are on that program obviously have a rate that's set through 2025. We could talk, it's for some time now. Yeah, 2 years more. And that your rates are set, so that's obviously less of a burden to you, but I know that there's other people in this room that do not live in Gloucester who are going to be dealing with that rate increase. And things are somewhat volatile right now, I think, in all energy markets. So it's I'm hoping a short-term issue, but all of us who listen to the news know that, you know, it's the big question to know what's going to happen the next time that National Grid has to go out to secure their rates is somewhat dependent on what's going on in the energy markets. So I don't know if anybody else wants to offer any thoughts on that. I unfortunately am not from the service side of the company, so I'm somewhat in the same boat as all of you in terms of trying to know how to maneuver all of this, but I'm appreciative of the cities and towns that have done municipal aggregation because it steadies things out for a lot of the community. So,
I think the only thing I'd add is just clarifying what you were just saying, especially if you're on, even with the 60% increase, if you're on oil, propane, or you have electric baseboard, which is already electric, then this still absolutely makes sense. On the gas side, that depends on how other prices will fluctuate, but on those types of systems, even with that increase, it would still make sense to make the change.
And that would include propane too. So.
I have a comment to add and also a question to ask. The comment is that when I put up solar panels in 2016, and maybe things have changed since then, in addition to the federal and state tax credits, if you live in Massachusetts, you're available for solar energy renewal credits. And those can be very substantial. Keep in mind that they pay you for the complete amount you generate, even if there's no excess. Even if you use all of it yourself, you're still getting paid for the amount you generate. And the payback period I saw on mine was about 4 years when you include the solar renewable energy credits. My question is, if I'm not interested in replacing my heating system at this time, will you still help me evaluate whether I should be doing additional installations at the home?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, that's one of the main things that the Mass Save program is focused on. So, whether or not you're interested in changing to a heat pump or changing your heating system right now, absolutely still recommend it to get the energy assessment. It doesn't cost you anything. Have somebody come out, kind of what I was saying at the top of this in terms of taking a look at all that insulation work that you need. And the program has amazing incentives on that insulation work itself. So again, anything that is air sealing related to stop drafts of air getting in and out of your home, it's 100% covered by the program. You don't pay anything for that. And then anything that's more insulation based, so attic insulation, wall insulation, things like that, is 75% covered by the program. So if you on average you're looking at a regular home has, let's say, I'm going to make up a number, so don't hold me to this, but say $4,000 worth of work to be done, the amount you pay for that is $600, $800, et cetera, for that $4,000 amount of work. And then even that amount, you could get a 0% financing on through the program as well. So all of those things combined still make that a definite no-brainer. And if you stay with your old system, it still has a huge impact on the efficiency of your home and should decrease your costs, whether or not you change that system.
I would add to that, if you are moderate or income eligible customer, the incentives on weatherization are even better, and also special incentives are available for rental units. So if a whole building were to go and have weatherization done. So if you're a tenant or a landlord, obviously benefit to engaging with the Mass Save program as well. So I just want to bring that up because Homeworks definitely can serve the single family home, but I know there's a lot of other home types in this area of the state, and we can definitely take advantage of the Mass Save program and see some great benefits.
So not a question, but a comment. We installed heat pumps approximately 2 years ago, and interesting things. So, two estimates provided, they were within $40 of each other, and about a $17,000 system. The big difference was the size of the units that were recommended. One had a smaller one in a living room area and a bigger one in the bedroom. The other had a much larger one for the living room and a small one for the bedroom. Our house is open plan, which it's an old house that was renovated to be open plan, and that system that was recommended was called it was a Mitsubishi, but it's a far and wide, so it really blows the air a great deal of distance. We also have a 4-year-old ultra-high efficiency gas hydronics unit boiler, so we use them in combination. Often in the morning we'll turn on the heat pumps for 15 minutes and the whole downstairs is warm, and we'll scale that back and let the hydronic system balance, and also use the wood stove, so it's a balancing act of what works best. And I reiterate what Tom was saying, it's very important, and that was our lesson, to think about what the different contractors are proposing, because the units are very different, and you need one to fit your house. If it's an old New England house with a lot of little rooms, as someone was saying, some rooms you might not use. You just have your old baseboards or whatever. So there you go.
Complex system.
2 questions. When do the current rebates expire? And the other question for the action folks, as a landlord, do my tenants have to be low income for me to qualify?
So I'll just take the first question. So the incentives that I mentioned before, $10,000 for the whole home and $1,250 per ton are for this current 3-year program. So the Mass Save program goes in 3-year increments. This particular year started at the beginning of this year, so through 2024. I can't speak to federal and state, but hopefully we'll get you some more information on that soon.
As far as your tenants, do you own a multifamily home or a 2-family? So if one of your tenants is on fuel assistance or the discount rate, we could do the whole house in terms of weatherization. We have a 50% rule, and that applies to the air source heat pumps also. So are they both eligible? Or?
I don't think so.
None of them are eligible?
I don't think so.
Okay, so, yeah.
I'll check.
All right.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, yes, so obviously if they are income eligible, then they fit within the action program. If not, the regular Mass Save contractors can do that work. They can also be, again, within a moderate income, which is a different income level, which provides additional incentives as well. So whichever contractor or representative you end up working with should be able to work through that income verification process with your tenants. But yeah, again, just obviously I know Homeworks better than any other contractor. So, but yeah, for Homeworks, single family, multifamily, etc. We do all those different types of home types. So, again, if you're interested or your tenants are interested, but first of all, I love that the landowner is the one who's interested in doing this, because that's usually the harder part to do. So, we'd love to talk to you, as I'm sure that the folks at Action would as well, if it is income eligible.
I'd like to follow up that also. So when we come across situations where we're not able to serve them as an agency, we refer to Homeworks or our Mass Save to get those clients the services, and at least they'll get they can still get their house insulated or heating system replaced or whatever the service that you need. So.
I have a comment on something that's related but not exact, and that is radon. This is an area where we have a lot of radon because it's granite, and therefore maintaining a certain amount of ventilation remains very important. If you seal up your house and you don't get ventilation, you're more likely to have radon concentrations at the lower levels. So be very careful about how much you seal up. Make sure that you maintain ventilation in order to not have that as a problem. Remember, that used to be a big concern, and they found out that a $5 fan and ventilation could handle it, and it wasn't a great problem. Also, I used to teach courses in energy economics and also energy resources and also various other kinds of stuff. And I just wanted to point out that everything is dependent not only on the technology that's available, but also on the relative economics that goes with that technology. I would like to advise the gentleman over here about his concern. I put a new system in a couple of years ago, and I can assure you, you will save a lot of money with the newer systems as far as heat pumps are concerned. I've had a heat pump in the unit that I live in ever since I bought it back in 1988. So I've been on heat pumps and electricity when the electric rates were horrible, and I'm lucky enough I'm in on a consortium with the city. Boy, am I happy about that. Thank you.
The only thing I'd say, there is a minimum airflow standard as well for the homes that we have to leave them in when we're doing that work. So there is always going to be sufficient airflow. But if you're concerned about radon, separately, I would recommend home inspectors, etc., can do radon test. You can buy a little radon test kit yourself and send it into the mail. And if that's something you're concerned about, there's separate radon mitigation that's not too expensive to install. That should be something you look at anyway. So that's not a mass save thing or anything like that, but it's true, especially with the type of bedrock that we have here. It is something that you should look at for your own home.
Can I just add to that? Because it inspired me to think of the fact that there's special incentives also available for people who have knob and tube wiring through the heat loan, that you can get additional grant money to take care of that. So, if you have special circumstances in your home, I guess my message is when you have it assessed, it's a good conversation to have with a specialist. They know all about the things that exist often in Massachusetts housing stock that you may need to overcome before you can do your weatherization, and they're very knowledgeable about how to overcome those barriers and what you might want to consider, and also financial support available for you to take advantage of that. That's part of the heat loan. So you can not only finance your weatherization, your heat pumps, but you could do any additional barrier mitigation that needs to happen.
Hi, I live in a house that's 170 years old, and I'm single, and I'm getting old, but I have an oil burner that is, gas, and radiators throughout the house. It works pretty well, but that system is 30 years old, so I have kind of crossed my fingers that I'll be okay. I had Mass Save come last year, and they did the whole assessment and gave me reams and reams and reams of paper about all the things that I should probably consider doing. But I'm on limited income, so I have to be cautious about how I spend my money. And when you talk about getting a contractor and all of this, it sort of paralyzes me because I don't know who the good contractors are. I don't know who any contractors are. And the other thing is I had Mass Save or a comparable program come when I first bought my house in the first few years, and they said, oh, you need insulation in the attic. And I said, I think I even had help from Action back then. And they put insulation all on the floor of my attic, which I thought was great. And then Mass Save came this year and they said, oh, you need that all redone. It's inadequate, wasn't done properly, blah, 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 blah. So I feel like I want to be smart about the way I invest my money, and I obviously have a system that's on the verge of failing. But I think we just need coaches or somebody who's on our side who can say this is a good vendor, this is not, and here's the maximum savings you can get. I'm retired now, but I'm not poor, thank God. but I'm, you know, barely making it middle class, I guess. And so I'm not eligible. The other thing with Mass Savers, they gave me this whole report, and the first thing they said is the weatherization, closing off all the drafts and things like that. And I tried doing the weather stripping, and I'm just not good at it, you know? So I kept calling them back and saying, is there anyone you can send out? Because they had everything to give me if I wanted to make big investments. But if I wanted to do something simple, like the weatherization, which would have helped me a lot, I felt like I was kind of on my own and figuring out which width to get, how to apply it, and all that. So that's my situation. And I'd love any advice you can give. That's like, you know, I need a coach.
So just a couple of comments. It sounds like you're referring to do-it-yourself weather stripping, which is one way of addressing the air pockets around a door or a window. And that's one form of weatherization. The types of weatherization that like a company like Homeworks would do is going to be more like air sealing for large cracks, and also insulation in the wall cavity or on in the roof, like you mentioned, on the floor of your roof, floor of your attic. Yeah, so I'm gonna let the Homeworks folks also reflect on that. But I would say, in terms of needing assistance, there are a variety of organizations that are in the room that can maybe talk to you talk you through some of these issues. And I'm thinking of the fact that Tom's here, he's next to me, but he's helped a lot of folks, but also just with the organizations on the edge. Maybe while you're here, you can take advantage of chatting with us to talk through your specific circumstances, because this is a great audience. You've got a lot of people in here. Some people who've done a boatload of research on their own, but also a lot of people who spend a lot of volunteer hours to help folks out. And I would also just reflect in terms of your specific circumstances about your latest Mass Save assessment. If there's anything personally you want to talk to me about, I'm glad to chat through it with you, either now or during the week when I'm back in my office.
So you're coming into...
So I'm going to interrupt, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you, in 5 minutes, we're going to be done with the question period. I'm going to ask you and everybody to go to the tables and have these conversations, because there's so much that the questions need follow-up conversations. Yours is one of many. And so we have time for 2 more questions, and then we'll have that opportunity. We have one up here. And then we'll have that opportunity to have those one-on-one questions with people at the tables, or on the panel, people will all be at tables.
Can you talk about what kind of maintenance these systems need, and whether there's a difference between the air unit and the in-ground unit? I assume there would be.
On the ground source, we have a maintenance contract, and they come in twice a year, cooling season, heating season, and do what they do. It's not that different from what they do for normal heating and cooling systems, but they have to be familiar with the specific components that are unique to that. I imagine it's the same thing on air source.
Yeah, I mean, and kind of as Tom was saying, that an air source heat pump is essentially a refrigerator or an AC. It just works in both directions. That's really the only difference. So it's the same type of maintenance. So you would come in, and there's filters that need to be cleaned out, and the other main one is checking the pressure on the refrigerant line, because as Tom talked about, it's really that pressure change that is how it works. And so if it loses pressure, it becomes less efficient over time. So those are really the 2 things. You have a technician come out, you'd have a service plan with the contractor who installed it, most likely, and they'll come out once, maybe twice a year, depending on what's needed, and do some basic maintenance. But it's nothing complicated, definitely nothing that you would need to do yourself. Definitely don't check the refrigerant lines yourself. You could, potentially the filters, but yeah, it's relatively standard. It's nothing too complicated.
Last question. Yeah, last question, sorry. Good, we got one person there.
Just a quick question on ballpark lead time. If you were to put a system in now, when would you expect? It's not done.
Yeah, I think it's probably might be different in different programs as well. The question was the lead time. How long basically does it take to get through this process? So for us on the homework side, you would, if you're starting from scratch, in order to get these great incentives, et cetera, you need to do the energy assessment first. So you'd have to schedule this, have an energy specialist come out, go through your home, all that stuff that we just talked about. They would then recommend a system. You'd probably have a heating and cooling specialist come out because it is complicated to figure out exactly what system needs to be made. They'd then propose a solution, and then you'd schedule the actual install. So there's a couple steps along the way. Energy assessment for us, you're probably on average 2 weeks out, something like that, so relatively quick. You can have a heating and cooling visit a week or two after that, and then you'd have your install. You'd have to go through some paperwork processes to make sure you're eligible for all the incentives and that we qualify and the contract gets reviewed by the program. There's a lot of steps to protect kind of what somebody else was talking about, making sure that the contractors are reliable. There's a lot of steps in the program to make sure that that happens. So you'd go through those steps and then we'd get that install. So all together, maybe from start to finish is 3 months, and the biggest chunk of that is that last bit of going through all the correct paperwork and getting financing is usually the biggest chunk there. So if you want to do that 0% heat loan, that'll take some time, and you would need to go to your own bank or one of the eligible banks to do that. If you're not doing it through financing, it can all happen a lot. The whole thing is 6 weeks or so. You could have everything taken care of. So it takes that makes a big difference.
Okay, I want to thank you all. You've been fabulous audience. The questions have been amazing and very helpful to all of us who are trying to learn. And I can't thank you all enough. And we're going to keep you working for another half hour. Please, this is your chance to connect. You can even sign up for some things directly here to ask more questions, to get follow-up. So thank you very much. You were very informative. We learned so much. We can't.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.